Hello and welcome back to the Unpractice space. Now on YouTube because I got up the courage to start putting these on YouTube, so that's interesting. So if you're joining me from YouTube, welcome. If you are joining me from Patreon, welcome to you as well. So this is the end of August. Amazing. Am I right? We've been talking about posture all month. So this is the fifth episode for the month of August because we have 5 fancy Thursdays this month. So we get a bonus episode on posture. And this episode, I wanted to talk about specializing in instruments too young. Now, this month we've talked about good posture, we've talked about tension, chronic tension, we've talked about ergonomics, and there was another one. Oh, the stretching and strengthening workouts for specific instruments. That was last week. And we have a huge problem in music. We have an epidemic of sorts of physical injuries as well as mental health issues. And you maybe have seen the statistics. I think it's somewhere over 90% of musicians will get injured at some point in their career. That's a number that I've seen in at least one study. Most of the studies you see, I've never seen a study where the numbers seemed reasonable. The numbers are always just ridiculously high, and the highest one I've seen is around 90%. So 90% of musicians will get injured at some point in their career related to playing their instrument. And then I think it's something like 70 to 75% of musicians will struggle with their mental health as well. And we like to look at these as separate problems. And I don't think that they're separate, personally. And that comes from my own experience and watching friends as well. So many of us for a long time have been talking about these issues and trying to draw attention to them. One big piece that I think is critically important in this conversation, but I've never heard anyone talk about, is young musicians. We have children as young as 2, but more commonly around the age of 5 or so, starting to play an instrument. And that's almost always with a focus on a particular instrument, right? So the Suzuki programs or whatnot, where it's like, here's your violin. This is your instrument. This is what you're playing now from the age of 2 and on. And that's not a criticism of Suzuki or anything like that. It's an observation. They start very young. And I know many people where their child picked the instrument. They really wanted to play the violin. That's great. It's not a criticism of the violin either. So I realize that this episode might ruffle a few feathers. I myself was part of the music education zine for a long time. And we really pride ourselves on how vital music education is. And I really do believe that it is. But I also have seen so many teachers pushing for kids to take on lots of extracurricular musical performance organizations on their chosen instrument. And whether it's private lessons or school orchestra programs, extracurricular performance organizations, all state orchestras, regional, states, solo ensembles, all those things. There's a lot for kids to get buried in. And I've seen it. I've experienced it from both sides, being a student and being a teacher. Teachers take it personally when a student and their parents choose not to do all these things. And so that's an interesting conversation to have. Though that's not necessarily the focus of this particular episode, but I do think it's an interesting note. Just teachers, we need to evaluate some of that emotional connection to this ourselves, and when we take it personally, when a student chooses not to do all the things that we recommend, right? In the world of youth sports, it's pretty common knowledge now that it is detrimental to children to specialize too young in a sport. But somehow this news has yet to reach the music world. And with all our talk of needing to train like an athlete, where is our thought to our youngest community members? So I found this article from the National Athletic Trainers Association, and it's an article entitled Youth Sports Specialization Recommendations. And so I'm going to read a little bit of it here. I will also post a link to it in the show notes, the comments, for you to be able to go read it yourself. So this is the National Athletic Trainers Association president, Tori Lindley, talking about this. This is the quote from her, them. Studies show that young athletes often see specialization as a prerequisite to advancing, whether it's making the varsity team, earning a college scholarship, or progressing to a professional level. When athletes specialize too early or engage in excessive play, and play in this context is the sport, right? Playing the sport specifically, they are increasing the probability of injury and reducing the chances of achieving their goals. We want to help athletes and parents recognize health is a competitive advantage. And then this statement has been endorsed by like the Professional Football Athletic Trainers Society and the Professional Hockey Athletic Training Society, all these different training societies, Intercollegiate Sports Medicine Council, all these things. So here are the 6 points that they make in their recommendation. So number 1, delaying specializing in a single sport for as long as possible. And then they say, sports specialization is often described as participating and or training for a single sport year-round. So sports specialization is often described as training for a single sport year-round. Adolescent and young athletes should strive to participate or sample a variety of sports. This recommendation supports a good general physical fitness, athleticism, and reduces injury risk in athletes. Number 2, one team at a time. Adolescent and young athletes should participate in one organized sport per season. Many adolescent and young athletes participate or train year-round in a single sport or simultaneously competing in other organized sports. Total volume of the organized sport participation per season is an important risk factor for injury. 3, less than 8 months per year. Adolescent and young athletes should not play a single sport more than 8 months per year. 4, no more hours per week than age in years. Adolescent and young athletes should not participate in organized sport and or activity more hours per week than their age. So i.e., a 12-year-old athlete should not participate in more than 12 hours per week of organized sport. 5, 2 days of rest per week. Adolescent and young athletes should have a minimum of 2 days off per week from organized training and competition. Athletes should not participate in other organized team sports, competitions, and or trainings on rest and recovery days. And then the last point, rest and recovery time from organized sport participation. Adolescent and young athletes should spend time away from organized sport and or activity at the end of each competitive season. This allows for both physical and mental recovery, promotes health and well-being, and minimizes injury risk and burnout/dropout. So what can we, the music community, the music education community, the music industry, take away from this? What sticks out to me is the focus on rest. And I think in the part of the music industry that likes to talk about musicians as small muscle athletes, we have a tendency to focus on all the prep, the strengthening, the seemingly hardcore, badass, sexy stuff that athletes do, like the foam rolling and ice baths and all that kind of crazy stuff. We try to make ourselves do that. We take all the stuff and we do this stuff. But notice here that NATA, N-A-T-A, is focused on rest for young athletes. They need time to recover, and they need time to assimilate what they're learning in their constantly growing bodies. So if we were to take the NATA recommendations and apply them to music education, maybe it's not a complete, glove fit, but it could look something like this. And this is just a starting point. If you have ideas, please contact me. I would love to discuss with other people these ideas because I really think this is important. So here's what I think it could look like. 1, delaying specializing in a single instrument for as long as possible. So young musicians should strive to participate, just like NATA said, or sample a variety of musical expressions, whether that's instrumental, vocal, conducting, maybe even dance, and musical styles. And throughout this list, I equate sport and instrument. So when they talk about organized sport, I'm trying to look at it as the instrument and everything organized around the instrument, like lessons, performance, organizations, practice, etc. Just as a side note. So number 2, young musicians should not participate in more than one musical organization per season. Now, this is a little tricky because seasons, we are seasonal, but we aren't seasonal as musicians. I don't know, it's a little complicated. But trying not to take on more than one in a musical season. This would be in an effort to make sure that they are not overwhelmed with the task of keeping up with the practice and attention required to maintain multiple concert schedules. Now, number 3, less than 8 months per year. Now, this one might prickle some people. Young musicians should not focus on a single instrument more than 8 months per year. And this time off is crucial for developing bones. Yes, they're developing all through childhood and adolescence. And this means that 4 months of the year should be focused on something else, musical or otherwise. Okay, so now number 4. No more hours per week than age in years. So for NATA, they say if a child is 12, then they shouldn't be participating in more than 12 hours per week in an organized sport. With developing musicians, we have a tendency to focus strongly on practice outside of performance organizations and lessons. And I think for us, we need to look at the overall time spent with the specific instrument. So let's say a 12-year-old violinist. What is their cumulative time between weekly lessons, school orchestra, extracurricular performance organizations, and the expected practice time for any and all of those activities? What does that all add up to? Because if it's more than 12, then there needs to be some rethinking for that child. Okay, so now number 5, 2 days of rest per week. And this is from performance organization rehearsal, competitions, and other performances. Frankly, any and all focused practice on the specific instrument of that season. Then the last is rest and recovery time from a specific instrument. This one is closely related to number 3, not spending more than 8 months per year focused on a single instrument. This one just hammers home that the other 4 months need to be used resting. And frankly, those 2 days, right? The 2 days per week. So if a young musician spends 8 months focused on the violin, everything is done around the violin, then the next 4 months should not be a switch to the viola. That's not resting their violin muscles, right? That is just, giving them a bigger one. Other musically related things can be done in those 4 months. So it's not just a complete abstaining from music. You can do lots of other things, and I'll get to that in a second. But they need to have a true break physically from what they were just focused on. I think it's also important to note that the 4 months can be divided. So you could be playing for 2 months and then take a break for a month. You can play for 5 months, take a break for 2 months. There's lots of different ways to divide it up. But there needs to be that break cumulatively. And the break is super, super important. And as NATA said, that break allows for the both physical and mental recovery, promotes health and well-being, and minimizes the risk of injury, burnout, and dropout. And we all want that. We all should want that, right? So I know if you're a teacher listening to this, and if you've given me a chance to get this far, I really, really appreciate it. But you might feel that this is limiting. I can almost feel you cringing at my suggestions here because it's really difficult. This is not in the norm at all. And my hope is that, by making suggestions that seem really big and grandiose, that at least we can move the needle a little bit. So how are we supposed to get anything and everything done? Or is, you might be saying music is just different than athletics. It's just not the same when we talk about youth music versus youth athletics. And it's, again, funny to me that it's only different until we become adults. And then now we're supposed to make this shift to thinking like athletes. If we want to foster happier, healthier musicians who are set up for sustainable careers, we need to start young. Because we have that idea about technique, right? If you want to have violinists with good posture and good technique, then you need to start them young. Same deal with having happy, healthy, sustainable careers. It needs to start young. We can't just throw all this stuff at them that's pretty toxic and harmful, honestly. And then when they get to college, expect them to just snap out of it and get going and be healthy. We also, most importantly, need to recognize that these children are humans. They are human. They're going to grow up and be adults. Music education is an extension of fostering curiosity and the desire to learn and better oneself. If we are wrecking children because of our teacher, parent pride of wanting them to, wanting to see them play in front of an orchestra before they're 10, we are doing them, a disservice feels like it's not even the right word, but that's the only word I have right now. But we're not doing them any good. Sure, some kids may have the drive to want to play in front of an orchestra before the age of 10, and that's wonderful. But even those kids deserve to be kids and explore the world and experience music in a loving, nourishing environment. So I think we would do well to see music education as not needing to play one instrument at a high level from the very beginning, but that it be a focus on learning the languages of music. And that can come from so many different directions. Like if you look at it as just a focus of opening up the language of music and the languages, of music to children, like that actually really broadens everything and hopefully eases the burden a little bit. So this could mean learning a variety of instruments, singing, composition, oral skills, music reading, music history, music theory, even conducting. I've been a conductor before, so I don't know, we're weird. But I feel like even then, with all that, there's actually big bonus points if any of this can be combined with dance. Dancers are notoriously undereducated when it comes to music, and I know this also because I was a dancer and I've taken dance classes in my adult life, and the discussions of music are always interesting to me. Love dancers though, love dancing. And I think that there's a huge potential for cross-disciplinary learning and helping to create more well-rounded, just citizen artists, helping the dancers with their music education and helping the musicians embody more of the music. I mean, what could go wrong? No, I'm sure lots of things. But anyway, so what's stopping any and all of this is money. What I'm suggesting here is different, and unfortunately that means probably pretty expensive. I'm a homeschool mom, and we are fortunate that we get to explore things a little differently than the norm, but I won't lie, it's really difficult sometimes, and it can feel a little lonely too. So I think I'm going to leave it there for today. I'm really curious to see if anybody out there has any thoughts or any experiences with this, because I'd love to know more from other people. So yeah, next month, the month of September, oh my goodness, we are going to be talking about curiosity. And I have a couple of interesting books that I've been reading, and I'm looking forward to sharing some information about those with all of you out there. So please join me on YouTube for these prompts episodes. Join me over on Patreon for more that I offer. Movement related lessons. I am also a Feldenkrais practitioner, so we focus on movement lessons and how using the Feldenkrais method can help broaden and unlearn these toxic classical music habits that we have acquired over our careers and education, funny enough. So please let me know if you have anything that you'd like to share, and I look forward to talking next week with you. Take care. Bye.